Welcome to the Jay Kim Show, Hong Kong's very first podcast focused on entrepreneurship and investing in Asia. Join us as we survey the land and discover the greatest companies and most profitable investment opportunities in Asia. If this is your first time listening, thank you for stopping by. This podcast is produced every week with the goal of providing actionable insights to you, the listener, with every single episode. And now, on to the show. Hi, Megan. How are you doing?
Thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. So for the audience watching in from around the globe, maybe you could give us a little introduction, a quick intro. Who's Megan Cox and what do you do for a living?
Sure. As Jay said, my name is Megan. I am a 2014 graduate of MIT. And after I graduated MIT, I decided to move to China. And I moved here by myself. That sounds crazy. I've been here for 3 years now. I have my own beauty brand, Amelie. And when I moved to China, I found factories here on the ground and I worked directly with them for my packaging. And from there, I started doing consulting. So I have a consulting firm, Genie Supply, where I help other beauty entrepreneurs get started in China as well.
Very nice. So this is pretty exciting to me. So it sounds like you were an entrepreneur, kind of had this tendency inside of you for a while. And was your decision to move to China based off of basically the business and your desire to really kind of research on the ground, the supply side of your business based in China? Is that why you moved here?
Yeah, it was a little bit stronger than that. I started my beauty brand, Amelie, when I was in college. It was the year before I graduated, like the summer before I graduated. And I had a lot of packaging issues. So I had worked so hard to get all of these customers. And then my packaging just was like not working halfway through the product. It would just stop working. And this happened on 2 different versions with 2 different factories. So then it was kind of a last-ditch effort. I just told my customers, I'm just going to go to China and figure this out myself. And I'm going to blog about it the whole way, and you guys are going to be involved in the process, but I promise you that I'm committed to solving this issue. And then I never really left.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, how did you come up with this, with your business in college?
I was cheerleading and dancing, and I used to get eyelash extensions because I was performing all the time. So I'm like, I'm just going to get the extensions and keep them on. But they ended up destroying my natural lashes. So I wanted to regrow my lashes. And when I looked at products in the market and, like being the nerd I am, I also looked at the research, like in the MIT database. I just saw this big gap. And I decided to take that research, which is already, done by scientists, published, peer-reviewed, and then commercialize it and turn it into a product. So my first product was called Wink, and it helps regrow lost eyebrows and eyelashes.
That's pretty interesting. I think my wife would like your product because she's always like, it's actually quite popular here, the eyelash extension stuff, but she always rips them out after like 2 days because she's like, I can't deal with it. And that's
exactly what I did. And you waste all that money, and then like it destroys your natural lashes, so you're in a worse position than you started in, like in a lot of ways. Yeah. So yeah, I can send you some just across the border.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. So it was actually kind of solving a personal pain point, and you decided to be an entrepreneur and figure out a solution for it. And then so after you graduated from college, the business was running to the point where you were generating enough revenue to survive off that business?
Yeah. And I would say after my first year, I was doing over 6 figures. So it was enough for me to live on. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. So it was enough for me to live on, be self-funded, and make all of those mistakes and keep going.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And originally you sourced your product directly from China, or was it elsewhere and then you kind of stumbled upon Chinese suppliers? How did that work?
I had to get the packaging from China. So the Wink it's housed in this aluminum tube that you twist to get the liquid to come out. I made the formulation in the States myself in the beginning. And then I had to get the packaging here because there weren't any factories in the US. So it's just, I had to go to China.
Right. Okay. So it was, tell me a little bit about the workflow then. So it was, you had the solution yourself that you created in the States. And
Yeah.
then you would ship your solution to China and get it packaged?
Oh, no.
Or?
No way. No. So what I did, okay. And in the beginning, I was like, I have no idea where to start. So I started on Alibaba, like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
This seems like OG though. This is 5 years ago. And I finally found a factory that I think it was an agency. They're willing to offload like 500 units. So I got them screen printed and shipped to me. I did have to buy like, I don't know, 5,000 or 10,000 boxes though. No one would do less. And then I made the liquid and I filled the bottles by hand. Like it just, yeah. You only have to follow good manufacturing practices in the States. So it really wasn't an issue. Just you download the manual from the FDA, read it, and that's, follow it.
Right. Now, it must have been, at this point, you already had proof of concept? Is that why you were comfortable with getting 10,000 or whatever units shipped over? Or were you just kind of rolling the dice and saying, okay, I'm going to figure it out and I might end up with 10,000 empty?
Yeah. No, I had no idea. I was just like, I need a box because you need somewhere to put the ingredient list according to FDA standards. So right. I had a set amount of money. Like I had $1,800 to incorporate and get my first product out. And then I spent all of it and I had all these leftover boxes, but I didn't care. Like it didn't matter. I was happy to have the product. And then it was a challenge for me to sell it. But then that first 2 months were actually really easy. And I ended up reordering within like 2 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And was your experience dealing with Alibaba? How was that? Was there a bit of a learning curve to go up there? Because I feel like if I was in the States trying to do the same thing, I wouldn't even know where to start. And it's crazy because I've been living in Asia and Hong Kong, and Alibaba's like everyone talks about it. But how did you even start that?
I don't even know how I found Alibaba because I hadn't heard anyone talking about it. But I really spent the entire summer talking to suppliers and just begging them. But everyone just said 10,000. Like 10,000 is the MOQ for sure in cosmetics. Like 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. And then finally someone was like, okay, 500. And I feel like I was sending my money into the void. Like I had no idea what was going to happen. Yeah, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And I really don't feel like I ever mastered working with suppliers until I finally came here. And it's still like always a learning process. You're always learning new things. And there's like all kinds of tips and tricks, I guess.
Yeah.
And I switched suppliers every batch, the first 5 batches of packaging. Wow. I couldn't find a stable supplier.
Yeah. I'm still nervous myself. I mean, if I had, I don't speak Chinese, or I don't know do you speak Chinese?
I speak Mandarin.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that does help to a certain degree. I feel like if I were to embark on that sort of, I would just get ripped off. I would probably get like sent an empty box of nothing, and like see you later, So, but that kind of leads me down to a little bit further in your story. So you said that you're finally okay. You know what? I'm gonna pick up and figure out this thing for myself. So I'm going to just move over to China. So tell me about that experience. Before I hit record, I told you that, I've been in Hong Kong for 12 years now. I moved here in 2005 and it was completely different back then. And I imagine things have I imagine they must be a little bit easier to move as a foreigner, but I'm still very curious because most of my peers are similar to me because I met them when I first moved over here. So I'm very interested to hear what your experience was like moving over to, halfway around the world to China.
It was nuts. It was insane. Before this, I had lived in for internships in school. I lived in Boston, Miami, and LA. And every one of them I felt was, somewhat of a culture shock because I grew up in the Midwest. But then when I came to China, it's just like an entirely different world. And I don't feel like I was able to even, I came here with really high ambitions. Like I'm going to find a factory. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I did make it work. But I still don't feel like I even had a grip on ordering my own food and like taking care of my own needs here for at least a year. Like it was just such a steep learning curve.
Right. And so what was were your parents okay with that? Or they like, I'm leaving, I'm going to China,
Yeah, they don't have a lot of say. They were just kind of like, okay, honey. Like,
yeah, good luck. So tell me, so you landed and then you basically were targeting to find those package suppliers for your business. That was the main mission, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then, so
Yeah.
what led you to basically not getting back on that return flight?
There was no return flight, first of all.
Okay, one way. Okay.
I was like, I'm staying here until I figure this out. And I will be completely honest, now that that's like almost 3 years behind me, I had no freaking clue what I was doing. Like whenever I write, I was like, I have no game plan. I don't know what I'm going to do, but this was all like a very big, I don't know, just like, I don't want to say show, but it was for my customers, because I just want to show them like I'm dedicated to solving this problem.
Right.
And I did, but I had to go to Alibaba to find those manufacturers, and then just had them all send samples to me and tested all the samples, and then started going to their factories in person. Once I got through the samples that were like total crap, then I would go see the better factories and see their operations and discuss some of the finer details with them. And then I sent packaging directly to my customers' home, to 10 of them that had been with me, since the beginning. I sent them the packaging with some surveys, and then aggregated all of the data and chose a supplier from there.
Wow. So you actually got feedback from your customers.
Yeah, I really did.
You really had their best interests at heart. That's amazing. Okay. So again, after you figured out what the best packaging was, you could have just hopped on a plane and come back, but instead you decided to stay here. Why did you decide that?
There's just too much here to see and do, and everything was moving so quickly. I just never seen anything like that in the States before. Like, buildings would go up in weeks. I mean, insanely big buildings. And it just felt like everything was moving so quickly. I felt that I had to be a part of it. I didn't know what that meant yet, especially because the formulations for all my products are made in the US. And I really still didn't have a clue what I was doing. And at that point, my Mandarin was like laughable. I mean, probably still is laughable to most people, but it was like really bad at that point. But I just felt like I had to stay. I felt like there was more for me to do here and that I wasn't done. I mean, China is just way too interesting for me to give up at that point.
Yeah. I mean, you're brave. Even myself, I wasn't brave. I came to Hong Kong because I was too scared to go straight into China. And Hong Kong is an easy place for Americans to come in because everyone speaks English and whatnot. But so that's pretty. That's actually a very fascinating story. Now, do you have someone stateside that's helping you with your operations there?
Yeah, I have 2 employees there that help me.
Oh, okay. And then do you also have a team based in Shenzhen as well?
I have an assistant here, but that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was basically your product line, and then you said you also have since some sort of consulting business for basically people that were like you before you moved over that needed help, right?
Right. Like, a few of my contacts had been reading my blogs, and they just said, hey, can you do that for me? Like, I need someone in China that can go check the packaging for me or negotiate something. Someone said, I can't get this product made anywhere in the world. There's a wait list. It's 2 years long. Do you know anybody? So it just started very organically like that. And the last 5 clients that I've signed on, though, were just complete strangers that found me. So now it's starting to evolve into like a real consulting business outside of my own contacts. And
are they like US based or what? Yeah, mostly US based.
Mostly US.
And it's all you're niched down to cosmetics.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Okay. So do you feel like now that you've been there for a couple of years, within that niche, you kind of have a good idea of like who the reliable suppliers are and that sort of thing? Do you think you have it pretty mapped out? You have a good grasp on it? With
certain products, I had to build that network from the ground up, and my own line doesn't include all of the products that I manufacture for. So there were still some things that I had to learn and still some new contacts that I had to make. But now I feel like I have a really tight circle, and those are the only people I work with, and it moves very, very smoothly. But in the beginning, it was a lot of legwork.
Right, to build up that number. You didn't have any friends or anything that contacts there initially, or? You
No.
literally just, that's so brave. I mean, even when I moved over here, I had high school friends that lived in Hong Kong, and that's made it super easy for me to come over. But so what were some of the if you could share with the audience, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you first got there? I mean, obviously you learned Mandarin, I guess, as soon as you arrived. And are you taking classes, or just kind of learning?
I had a private tutor for 3 months before I got here. And then since then, like, because I'm by myself, I really didn't have a choice, and humans are extremely adaptable. So things, moved pretty smoothly. I had books, I have audio tapes. But at this point, like, I do have Chinese friends. So that's the only way we have to communicate.
Right. So that helps. And how about you can also read and write as well?
My writing's better than my reading. If there's an extra stroke, I'm really not going to catch it. So sometimes I'll be reading things out loud and people are like, what are you doing? Because I will completely miss a word or two in a sentence. So yeah, my writing's way better than my reading because of opinion.
Right. What else, what other challenges did you face, being a businesswoman in China, or just doing business in general as a Westerner? It's funny because when I came over here, my challenge was, I don't speak Chinese, but my challenge was that everyone assumed I spoke Chinese because I look Asian, right? I'm Korean. Yeah. So I used to tell all my Western friends, you know what, you guys are lucky because they automatically assume you don't speak. So they just think that I'm an idiot that I can't speak.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but were there any other sort of challenges that you faced, moving over there, setting up your business in general, that you could, now 3 years later, looking back, that you could have avoided knowing what you know now? I'm just trying to, if there's any people in the audience that are perhaps as brave as you thinking about trying to make a move, if there's any tips or advice that you could give.
I would say that if you're trying to decide where to spend your time best in terms of, if you're going to do business in China, learning about Chinese culture is way more important than learning the Chinese language. Because, culture is extremely important here, period. It rules daily life, it rules business, and it runs deep. But also, even if you can speak Mandarin, most people here can speak more than one dialect of Chinese. So in business, they're going to circumvent you. And there's just no way around that. If you can speak Mandarin, they'll speak Cantonese. If you can speak Cantonese, they're going to speak Teochew. If you can speak Teochew, they're going to speak Hakka. So I would say if you're going to spend your time doing something, then that would be learning about Chinese culture.
Huh. That's pretty interesting. Yeah. It's not something that people would automatically assume language is the first thing and the most important thing for you to master. But it does make sense what you're saying, that people can speak multiple dialects or they'll just cut you out of the conversation altogether, right?
Right.
That's pretty interesting. What can you tell me a little bit about the trends that you're seeing in your space, in your niche, within China? You must have gone over there and without really knowing what cosmetics is like in China. How different is it from what you're seeing back at home, and what are the trends that you see shaping up right now?
I would say, just from a global perspective, the fact that celebrity is becoming something that's much smaller, much more in much smaller packages, is making it so that everyone wants to make their own brand, and they want to do so on a small scale. So when you look at the traditional factory model, people they want you to order 10,000 of something, and that doesn't work. That doesn't make room for entrepreneurs in the market. It doesn't make room for all these micro brands that are coming out, Instagram celebrities, YouTube celebrities. These people also want to make their own brands and they want to monetize that. So what I found is that I have found other young people in China that know this and they see this, and they're moving towards smaller and smaller quantities and being able to do things in smaller and smaller packages. We can charge a lot more money to do that, but there's definitely a big market for that right now. And that's just moving from that traditional large scale model down to something smaller. So for example, 10,000 units is usually the minimum for anything.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of lip gloss, liquid lipsticks, that type of thing, which is very popular right now in the US. In the US, you might be able to make 25,000 units per color. In China, it might be 10,000 units per color. But for my clients, I can get you 100 units per color. And that's something, that's just something that I have been able to do with my network here because I found like-minded people, usually like younger 30-something Chinese who own factories here.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's actually quite from an entrepreneur's standpoint, that's very helpful to run sort of your proof of concept, minimum viable products. You push that out in a small quantity. You don't have to do this large upfront investment of 10,000 units, and you can basically see if it works or not, and then and limit your downside. So that I can see that as being quite helpful. Do you sell any of your products into China?
No. There's involuntary animal testing if you want to sell a cosmetic product in China. So anytime that a US customer even catches a whiff of that, they'll just drop your brand. There's like a very popular blog in the US. I mean, there's a lot, but there's like a very, very popular one that just alerts people whenever brands are no longer cruelty free because they're selling in China. So this is a really big deal.
Oh, wow. That's something I've never even heard of. So anyone that sells cosmetics, so if you sell cosmetics into China, then they automatically can test it on animals?
Yeah, the CFDA, like the Chinese FDA, they force you to do involuntary, meaning they'll do it. They will do animal testing with your products if you want to enter the Chinese market. So the only way around that is like, I'm not sure. I don't even think it's
testing for? Testing for like toxins or?
No, all the animal testing has to do with allergic reactions and, what percentage of people are going to have allergic reactions. You can Google it. You're going to say, why did you make me Google that? But they like test things on bunnies and, dogs, cats, rats.
Which sounds ridiculous coming from China because I feel like the standards that we have in the States are much higher.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Why do they have to, why do they have to test them on animals? But I guess I could see why it's like a big outrage for groups like PETA or whatever, similar groups. Interesting. So one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about, which is something that I kind of just recently learned more about, is like the whole KOL scene, like key opinion leader, and these like micro celebrities. Are you on Chinese social media a lot?
I'm on Eatable. I have it's the, Weibo's like live video.
Right.
So I have an account there. I do makeup tutorials.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise I'm not super plugged into the Chinese social media.
Okay. I mean, I was just curious because when you were mentioning sort of like Instagram and influencers and that sort of thing, I know that in China, the KOL scene is getting bigger and bigger, where these little micro celebrities could really help propel someone's brand within China. Obviously, doesn't really affect you, but I was just curious if you had seen anything or noticed anything there. So what? Let's talk about what you're working on, sort of for the future. I mean, you obviously have your product line, you have your consultancy business. Where do you? Do you have anything exciting planned for sort of the next 6 months to a year? I mean, it's China, so there's a lot. Things move very fast there. A lot of things can change.
Yeah. Wow, that's tough. Yeah. With my own line, I'm launching a new product in 2 weeks on September 1st. So that's new for me. And then in terms of consulting, I actually am looking at opening up a lab stateside to do some of the smaller batch things, because while we can do them here in China, it's starting to make more sense to do some of that in the US and keep some of it here. Like obviously the packaging and the screen printing all has to be done here, but that's something that I'm looking at doing in the future too. There's a lot of reasons for that.
What is, when you're shipping your stuff back and forth, have you found any economical shippers or service providers to handle that sort of thing? When, I mean, your product's constantly being shipped halfway around the world, right? So how do you?
Yeah, that's actually why I'm thinking of opening a lab in the States, because for the smaller packages, like especially if you're just doing custom samples in the beginning, if you're sending samples back and forth from the US, like they'll rack up $500 and $600 bills just on shipping alone. And that's a lot for them to waste. They could be paying me that instead, right?
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah, but I did find an economical shipper on AliExpress, I think, recently, and I just sent a package yesterday for like 128 RMB to the US, and it's normally like $50 or $60, and that's I don't know, $18, $19.
Yeah,
so I'm
really good.
I'm finding cheaper and cheaper ways to get there. Yeah,
I think it's just a matter of time before you find the best solution. Well, listen, Megan, it's really good connecting with you. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story. I think it's fascinating. Before we look to wrap up, is there any sort of last words of advice for someone that maybe like you, entrepreneur, that wants to actually move to China and get in there and do some business and kind of get boots on the ground, based on the last 3 years that you've been there and what you've seen and learned? What piece of advice could you leave to our audience?
I would say if you're thinking about it, definitely just do it. Just dive in headfirst and do it. And when you're here, do everything that you can to meet people and keep getting out there and meeting people. It's really easy to just want to stay in your apartment and feel comfortable, but it's great to just go out there every single day and keep trying as hard as you can to network and meet more people, because that's the only way that you're going to keep moving. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's as daunting as it is, it's what you put into it is what you'll get back out of it. So It's definitely one of those things. Well, great. Thanks a lot. Can you tell us where our audience can follow you, find you, connect with you, and learn a little bit more about your products and your consulting service?
Yeah, sure. My beauty line is called Amelie. You can find us at ameliebeauty.com. That's AMALIE. Mm-hmm. And for any consulting questions, you can find me at geniesupply.com, or you can email me directly, Megan, MEGAN, at geniesupply.com.
And do you run a blog? I know you're pretty active on Quora, which is where I've read most of your stuff, that's why it's really fascinating, because I love the on the ground kind of just you documenting your journey. Those stories are really fun and entertaining. Do you write on a blog as well, or is it mostly on Quora?
Mostly on Quora. I have my own beauty blog too, because most of our visitors come from organic search. So I get pretty busy. I just use Quora for all of my China stories, all my boots on the ground stories.
Yeah, those are the really fun ones to read. All right, Megan, thanks again. We really appreciate it, and best of luck in China.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the show notes and links can be found over at jkimshow.com. Come back often and make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Don't forget to join us next week for another exciting episode of The J. Kim Show. I'd love to hear your comments. You can find me on Twitter at jkimmer, JAYKIMMER. See you guys next week. This podcast is brought to you by Hack Your Fitness, the high achiever's guide to getting ripped in under 3 hours a week. If you're anything like me, you're probably working a full-time job or jobs and trying to find time to balance family life, social life, and last but not least, fitness. Look, I get it. I'm a full-time investor and entrepreneur myself, and father of two. So how am I able to stay fit year-round without spending hours and hours in the gym killing myself on the cardio machine? After struggling for the last 15 years trying every workout and diet under the sun, I finally designed a system that allows me to achieve and maintain single-digit body fat for life in under 3 hours a week. Cardio not required. Head on over to hackyour.fitness and download my free 13-page guide that teaches you the simple science behind efficient fitness and smart nutrition and gives you everything you need to know to finally take control of your life. That's hackyour.fitness.